You have seen it before in the tilt of her head when you speak gently, in the way her smile fades when you offer peace instead of pain. You tell yourself it's confusion, but something older is at play. A ritual, perhaps, one she learned before she ever loved. There is a place in her that flinches at kindness, not loudly, quietly, like a child hiding under a silk sheet. And when you hold her too carefully, you awaken something she cannot name, something that claws beneath her ribs and whispers, "This is not how it ends." She watches you, not for what you give, but for what you withhold. The silence between your words becomes the only thing she trusts. You think she longs for calm. No, she studies it like a predator studies stillness before the kill, because peace has no memory, but pain leaves fingerprints. Pain teaches her who will stay, and every time you retreat into gentleness, she begins her test again, not to destroy you, but to feel real. You've met her, you just never dared ask, what does she really want when she says she's tired of drama? Now, you will. You think you are loving her gently, that your stillness will soothe what others have bruised. But she does not respond to your calm. She does not soften in your silence. Instead, she begins to drift, not away from you, but towards something more familiar, a memory with teeth. You watch her eyes searching for it, though she pretends she isn't, pretends peace is what she wants. But her body remembers otherwise. She was taught, long ago, without words, that love arrives with sharp edges. A voice raised, a gaze withheld, a hand pulled away at the exact moment it mattered most. And that lesson sank in deeper than anything she's since read in books about healing or balance or communication. Those words come too late. By the time she met you, the script had already been written, and in that script, kindness is not safety, it is a lie before the punishment. So when you offer it with no demand, no test, no cruelty, she doesn't trust it, not because she hates it, but because it does not match the wound. She has learned to translate attention into danger. She has learned that withdrawal means power, and what confuses her most is that you do not retreat. You do not conquer. You simply remain. That, more than any insult, unsettles her. There is a quiet terror that rises in her when you do not mirror her chaos. And in that silence, she hears the creak of an older room, the bed she curled up in while her father's voice echoed down the hallway, never entering her door. The moment the warmth she reached for was too busy, too preoccupied, too absent, not violently, just silently. That is the worst kind of absence, the kind that leaves no scar, only confusion. She carries that confusion like a rosary, counts each bead in every relationship. Why do I feel this way? Why do I push him away? Why do I want him more when he ignores me? And worse, why do I stop desiring him the moment he becomes kind? You mistake it for games. She does not play, she reenacts. And you are not the first man in her story, only the most unthreatening. That is why you are dangerous to her. She can't feel herself through you, because you do not recreate the pattern. But she needs the pattern, the mirror of abandonment, because it allows her to believe she is still desirable, still reacting, still alive. In the absence of pain, she feels nothing, and so she begins to test. Little tests. Delay a reply. Withhold affection. Watch how long you wait. Watch how much you offer. Not because she is manipulative, but because this is how she recognizes intimacy. You see, it is not peace she rejects. It is the absence of stimulation. Her nervous system, once trained to respond only to erratic pulses of approval, cannot digest consistency. It does not trust softness. Softness is the calm before the door slams, the hour before the apology vanishes, the exact moment the heart is opened, only to be left alone again. So you, with your gentle eyes and steady voice, are a paradox. She should love you. She tries to, but her body warns her something is wrong. Where is the danger? Where is the tension? What game is he playing? But you are not playing, and that is the cruelest twist of all. Because when you refuse to play, she begins to doubt her own instincts, and in that doubt, she sees herself, not the woman she posts, not the one who laughs loudly, but the little girl waiting behind the bathroom door, listening for the footsteps that never come. She does not want to return there, but you, without knowing, bring her back. You awaken her vulnerability without piercing it, and she hates you for it, because it means the wound is still open, that all the armor she forged, the allure, the aloofness, the cold fire was never enough to seal it shut. You simply sit beside it, patiently, lovingly, without demand, and that drives her mad. She wants you to chase, to assert, to force her hand, because that confirms the myth that she is worth fighting for. But you don't fight. You stay, you reflect, and worse, you understand. You interpret the silence not as a rejection, but as an origin. That terrifies her, because if you see too deeply, you will see she doesn't know what love is without pain. You will see that when she tells you she wants calm, she is lying, not out of malice, but habit. That her blueprint is not connection, but survival. That when you send a soft message in the morning, her heart feels nothing. But when you disappear for a day, she feels everything. Not because she prefers cruelty, but because cruelty taught her how to feel. And now, in your hands, she must feel differently. That is too much. So she sabotages. Not overtly, just slightly. A comment, a withdrawal, a new mask. Anything to reignite the drama that reassures her she still exists. You watch this happen, helpless. You tell yourself it's not about you, but part of you aches. Why does she push you away when you're the only one who never tried to own her? Why does she shrink from the exact safety she claimed to crave? And the answer lies not in her words, but in the dream she won't remember, the one where she was 4 years old, standing in the hallway, waiting to be seen, not saved, just seen. You see her now, too clearly, and she is not ready, because love that stays becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, she meets the one person she has spent her whole life avoiding herself. And that, more than any man, is what she cannot face. Not yet. Not while the wound still whispers. Not while the mirror still cracks. Not while you, standing so still, refuse to become the monster she was trained to expect. You don't see the ceremony, but it happens every time you touch her without taking, when your hands linger without conquest, when your voice softens instead of seizing. Something ancient begins again, the ritual she learned long before you ever existed. It is not a game. It is not even a choice. It is the reconstruction of a scene she barely remembers, yet repeats with ritualistic precision, the slow erosion of trust beneath the presence of someone who never truly arrived. She doesn't remember his voice. Not exactly. It echoes through gestures now. The pause before a compliment, the distracted nod while she speaks, the flicker in his eyes when she reached out. Only to be told, not now. He didn't vanish all at once. He faded, like warmth leaving a room. And she, too young to understand withdrawal, mistook that loss for her own failure. You see her eyes widen when you say something true, something real. She doesn't know what to do with it. Realness is a knife in her world, because it cuts through the illusion she needs to survive. And when your gaze lingers on her too long, when you see more than the surface, the hair she curled, the tone she adjusted, the script she rehearsed, she flinches, as if you've trespassed into the most forbidden chamber, the place where she stopped trusting love. You keep thinking if you show up enough, she'll believe you. But belief has never been her currency. She learned to barter with presence, conditional presence, the kind you had to earn. And so, in your consistency, she feels unequipped, lost, suspicious. Why aren't you pulling away? Why aren't you becoming him? She needs you to become him, not because she wants to suffer, but because the repetition is safer than the unknown. At least when you turn cold, she knows how to respond. At least when you leave, she knows what to feel. It's the waiting that kills her, the stillness, the steadiness. It mirrors the absence too perfectly, but this time, it's worse, because you haven't left. You're still here. You become the father who never yelled, who never hit, who never stormed out but simply stopped showing up, and in doing so, carved a hole so profound it rewrote her nervous system. She cannot fill it with words. She tries. She will say she wants a good man, a present man, a kind man. But what she wants and what her nervous system accepts are not the same. The body remembers differently. She reaches for chaos not because it excites her, but because chaos feels more honest. At least the screaming confirms connection. At least the abandonment confirms expectation. But you confirm nothing. You just stay. And that, to her, feels like being erased. So she tests, again and again. Not for dominance, but for a sign. Any sign that you are real, that you can be broken, that you can hurt her, because only then can she believe you matter. This is why when you hold her with reverence, she pulls away. This is why when you text her consistently, she forgets how to reply. Why her interest blooms under neglect but withers under devotion. She's not being cruel. She's reenacting the only love story she was taught, the silent man who meant everything, then slowly dissolved into nothing. You think she's afraid of intimacy? That's not true. She craves intimacy more than you do, but only the kind she can survive. And to survive love that is not mirrored by threat that is foreign. That feels like drowning in clear water, nothing to grab onto, no waves to fight against, only depth, stillness, silence. And in that silence, the truth appears she is terrified of being loved for no reason, because he didn't. Her father, or the one who played the role, did not stay, or maybe he stayed in body, but not in spirit. Present in the room, but miles away in thought. He made her feel invisible while claiming to care. That is the most dangerous spell, to be seen and unseen at the same time. So now, every time you say you see her, she looks for the lie, not because she wants to, because she must. You wonder why she chooses men who hurt her, why she returns to those who disrespect her. Because at least they give her something to react to, something to prove wrong, something to fight. You offer nothing to fight, and so she cannot feel herself in your presence. She feels only the phantom of who she was before she learned to perform. She does not desire pain, she desires recognition, but in her world, those two are fused. The moment she was recognized, it was in the aftermath of neglect. The apology after the absence, the warmth after punishment. So now, unless love burns, she does not believe it exists. You try to be patient, you call it trauma, you offer space, but she does not live in concepts. She lives in instinct. And her instinct is this: if you do not vanish, you cannot be trusted. If you do not punish, you must not care. If you are too present, you must be pretending. Her whole life is calibrated to that invisible absence, the one she could never name, the one she tried to fill with approval, attention, seduction, silence, and still, it whispers. Still, it waits. Every time you ask how she feels, it tightens. Every time you reach with softness, it recoils. Because you are not the man she needs to change. You are the man she must either break or flee from. For to stay with you would require rewriting the entire foundation of what she believes love is. And you standing so calmly in front of her are a threat to that foundation. You do not flinch, you do not chase, you do not control, you simply remain. And that presence is unbearable, because it demands something she has never been taught to believe: she is worthy of love that does not abandon her. But she doesn't. Not yet. Not while the echo of that vanishing father still rings in her blood. So she will leave, or she will make you leave, slowly, with small cuts, a tired tone, a dismissive glance, a refusal to let you near when she's most afraid. You will feel it. You will ask why. She will not have an answer, because the answer is not in her mind. It's in the memory of a door left ajar, a promise half kept, a gaze that passed over her as if she were not there. You are too steady, too patient, and that, to her, is the final betrayal. Because if you love her, really love her, then she must confront the possibility that the one who didn't was wrong, and that is a wound she is not ready to open. She doesn't chase the cold man because she believes he'll warm up. She chases him because his frost reminds her of the fire she couldn't touch. That ancient, flickering shape in her childhood memory, not a man, not a monster, just absence in the form of a figure she could never please. She confuses him with you, but you are not him. That is the problem. You offer the warmth without making her earn it. And so, she doesn't feel real in your presence. Only imagined, only floating. There is a sickness she won't name, a hunger she protects like a secret. It lives in her bones. You see it in the way her voice shifts when you don't react, when you don't play the part she's given you. She becomes restless, her body tenses, her words grow sharp without meaning to. She wants you to lose composure, to snap, to sting her just a little, to prove that you are alive, because until then, you're just another ghost, the kind that smiles without cost, touches without taking, sees without devouring. She doesn't want to be devoured, but something in her believes she should be. That desire without punishment isn't real. That love without fire is make-believe. She needs to be marked by it, to be burned, just enough to know that she is still wanted. And so she circles you, tests the edges, withdraws affection, speaks in riddles, not to confuse you, but to provoke your reaction, to stir that dark current beneath your calm, to see if it exists, to see if you are capable of madness, because only madness, to her, is proof that you feel, that you care. You, however, resist. You don't descend. You remain soft, patient, and this patience, she interprets it not as virtue, but as disinterest, indifference. How could you possibly love her if you aren't hurting because of her? This is the logic carved into her very being, that a man in pain is a man in love. And if you do not ache for her, she assumes you'll leave, because men who smile quietly, who offer themselves too gently, they always disappear. She's seen it, she's lived it, so she lights small fires, says things she knows will sting, pretends not to care, flirts with the line between loyalty and distance. She doesn't want to cross it, but she wants you to pull her back. You don't. You won't. You won't play the part. And in refusing, you break the spell, or at least threaten it. You think she's punishing you. She's punishing the silence. She's begging it to speak. The silence that began when she first felt her father turn his head slightly away, the day she wore her favorite dress. The silence that thickened when her laughter didn't bring him back into the room. The silence that grew into a religion. And you, with your stable presence, are now the altar. She will test that altar. She will press on it like a bruise, because pain reassures her she exists, that the flame still burns, that her body can still respond. You wonder why she leans toward the cruel man, why his gaze excites her, because his love burns. It cuts. It arrives with shadows. It reminds her of something, a pattern, a rhythm, the heartbeat of chaos. And chaos is home. You are not chaos. You are consistency, and that makes you feel like a lie. When she dreams at night, you're not in the nightmare. You're in the dream she forgets. The one where nothing breaks, where no one leaves. And that dream feels impossible, unreal. She wakes up suspicious of it. She prefers the dream where she runs, where she bleeds, because she knows how that one ends. She does not want to be broken, but she wants to break you. Just a little. Just enough to believe this isn't another illusion. Just enough to see what you hide behind your gentleness. Do you hide rage possession? The desire to consume her, you don't. And that terrifies her, because now she has to confront the truth that love does not need to punish. That desire does not need to hurt. That maybe the men who hurt her were not proof of love, but proof of confusion. And if that's true, then her whole life, all the choices, all the chasing becomes a mirror, one she cannot bear to look into. So she focuses on you instead, on your flaws, your softness, your quiet ways. She will say you're too passive, too calm, not exciting. She won't say the truth, that you reflect a possibility she's never believed in: love without punishment, desire without withdrawal, affection without chaos. She says she wants fire, but she means attention. She says she wants passion, but she means recognition. And when you offer both without making her bleed for it, she doubts, not you, herself. And so, she returns to the flame, to the man who disappears, then returns, who withdraws affection and then floods her with it. That rhythm, that burn, it hurts, but it also feels like home. You watch her go, again. You tell yourself she'll learn, that she'll come back when she's ready. But you know the truth, she will not return until she has burned herself enough to want stillness, until her body, exhausted by fire, begins to long for water, for air. You are the man who waits, not because you are weak, but because you do not need her pain to feel alive, and that makes you rare. But she isn't ready for rare. Not yet. She is still in love with the burn, not because she enjoys suffering, but because pain gives shape to the formless, because in suffering she remembers herself. You, however, offer her peace, not the numb kind, the deep kind, the kind that dissolves illusions, that asks nothing, that holds everything. But to be held, truly held, she must unclench her fists. Let go of the story, abandon the ritual, and meet you where it is quiet. That is the scariest place in the world for her, because in that silence there is no script, no fire, only the truth of her own hunger, a hunger she cannot project, cannot dress in desire, cannot hide behind drama. And so she runs, again, into the arms of the flame, because it hurts, and because it proves she's still alive. But one day, and you won't be there to see it, the fire will not answer. The chaos will bore her, the pain will become too familiar, and in that stillness, she will remember you, not as a man who failed, but as the man who refused to burn her. And maybe, just maybe, she'll come back, not to beg, not to explain, but to sit beside you, quietly, no masks, no rituals, just the ache of what could have been and the flicker of what might still be. She stands at the threshold, bare feet on cold stone, watching a candle burn down to its final breath. The room is empty now, no applause, no fury, no chase, just the faint trace of warmth where your hand once rested. She lifts the mirror but does not look, not yet. The glass is clean, too clean. It reflects only what she has not faced, a stillness that does not lie. Behind her, the flames she once danced in are dying without her. Before her, the silence waits not as punishment, but as invitation. And somewhere in that quiet, a question lingers like smoke in the lungs. What if love never had to hurt for it to be real? She exhales, and the question remains.